Hi, we're here with Michael Shaughnessy, Chief Operating Officer at Cargo. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, Keith, and thanks for having me today.
So first question, why is attention important?
If you look at today's digital reality, the average publisher that you go to on the internet, they're working with so many different partners to help monetize their site. So in some instances, that could be as many as 70 different partners. And for anyone who's seeing this or anyone who is really interested in attention and works within the digital advertising industry, I think it's really important to acquaint yourself with publishers as.txt files so you can see all of the different partners that go into monetizing a publisher site. And then I think the other thing that really makes attention so important and why it's so critical for advertisers to understand how to tell their story is that all of us have so much going on in our lives. So think of it this way. We check our phones probably, 6 times an hour just to look at our email. There is so many different things that are going on in our lives. And when it comes to brands breaking through with their messages, they should really take into consideration time of day, the types of creative that they're leveraging, the contextual components, because otherwise the average person is seeing hundreds and hundreds of ads per day and things get diluted. So I think one of the reasons why attention now is getting so much attention, pun intended, is that there are other factors that are bigger than advertising that are starting to influence digital advertising. So one example is with each generation, people are becoming more socially conscious about the environment, and digital advertising really plays into the way that we impact our carbon footprint. And going back to the top of what I was sharing is if the average publisher is using dozens and dozens of monetization partners that do this same thing, and they're basically auctioning off the same advertising slot multiple times where multiple different exchanges or partners are hosting that data and such, it's starting to make a situation where advertising is impacting our environment. But then to take it a step forward is that there are so many impressions that are wasteful because they don't capture the consumer's attention in the right environment. So it's not like the right media environment where whether it be CTV, that someone is actually paying attention to the program or that it's relevant to the programming that they're watching, or that the creative is something that is seen and memorable and drives better lift. So I think there's even bigger factors like sustainability, where if we use the right attention metrics or measurement and standardize it in the industry, it could also have some social goodwill as well. So I think based on advertisers being able to tell their stories, but bigger macroeconomic or socioeconomic reasons, or things like the environment, are really giving attention and spotlight in 2023.
That's a great answer. So we're in 2023. Attention is a backbone of virtually every industry award platform. There's standalone events, there's standalone organizations that are focused on attention. Why specifically this moment in time? Is it the talk of advertising? Is it related to technology catching up, concerns about historic metrics?
Mhm.
You mentioned some great reasons in your first answer, but why is it the talk of the industry?
I think it's a couple things. So as an industry, and what I was sharing previously is that really since 2015 or 2016, everyone has been talking about supply path optimization. And I think that buyers and publishers, as well as agencies, are getting smarter about who they partner with for a couple of reasons. One is I think the new wave of supply path optimization is really about value creation. And I think that attention is one way of measuring that value creation. So I think that that's why it's so top of mind. I think the other thing too is in our particular environment, there needs to be additional ways to measure the impact of your messaging and your branding and your storytelling. And attention goes beyond just like blunt metrics like video completions or viewability. And while some of those metrics may be integral to measuring the effectiveness of your storytelling, it really goes beyond that. So certain examples may be the contextual relevance, the share of voice. So is it an advertisement that is taking up the full screen on a phone and it has some sort of branded element that you can recall it? Is there a lot of ad clutter? And there's companies like Adelaide that measure these types of things as well. So I think it's really a few things. One is partners and people in our industry are being more strategic in how they partner with different members of the ecosystem. I also think, to your point, the technologies are also catching up. And then I also think that there's pressure to prove efficacy, whether it be within mobile or desktop, but even more importantly, as we move into CTV, as consumers, where we consume more through the streaming services and beyond, is going to be really, really important to demonstrate the effectiveness of advertising. And then one other thing that I think is really, really critical, and it's, I think, why broadcasters had so much success with their upfronts, is the time of day. The beginning of the day, we have less fatigue from the decisions that we're making, so attention could be a way to measure that. But then also too, when it comes to the broadcasters, upfronts were so successful with prime time. It's another moment based on just us as humans and the interactions in our day-to-day activities, where that is a coveted slot and where people are leaned in as well. So I think, to be short, or in short, it's that the technology is catching up. I think that people need to demonstrate that their storytelling is breaking through, and there's so many options. You need to be able to measure what's working or what's not.
You sort of touched upon, the different types of attention. So there's media attention, the in context where the creative's running, and then creative attention. Does the creative in a vacuum produce attention, capture attention? Do you think it's important to view those in tandem or separately? What is your recommendation to advertisers as they think about the different types of attention and how to maximize their understanding of it?
I think that it's critical that we view them as being intertwined, and I do think that they're interdependent and they have to work together. Because the reality is, if you have someone at the right moment and in the right environment, you need to make sure that you're able to maximize that opportunity and make sure that your messaging is coming through, and to be able to capture it with attention through creative. I think the other thing that's really important, and I think this is another opportunity for the industry to get this right, is that for so long, we were so fixated on leveraging different types of third parties and audience as our way to tell our story. And I think creative was always second, or not necessarily ever the headliner, I guess, when it comes to the amount of time that we invest in our media plans and the way that we communicate with consumers. So I think it's critical that as we build out solutions and as the way we measure attention and the way that we standardize it as an industry, is that we realize that these two things really do work together, and that's how you maximize your storytelling. And I think the other thing too, where there's been some studies that have confirmed this, is that it's important that you rotate your creative, and we've done a ton of studies with this as well, is that you may be able to reinforce the same message, but if you keep using the same creative, you actually are detracting from the attention of the consumer or the favorability or the lift that you're trying to drive. So it's really, really, really important to include creative as being as critical as the medium, so that you maximize those moments with consumers.
My final question. So there's been a number of brands, agencies that have really jumped headfirst into this, been early adopters, and then there's maybe the longer tail that are aware that they need to get smarter about attention. They need to incorporate it into their campaigns and their their analysis. What's the best advice for those that are just starting to get up to speed?
I would say maybe not necessarily advice to start, but the biggest opportunity is that there is such great purchasing power on the iPhone, and it's been such a missed opportunity within the programmatic channels. So I think for someone starting out, The advice that I would give is understanding the different things that feed into the attention model. So whether it be the share of voice, dwell, viewability, ad clutter. So just familiarize yourself with that, but then also look at the opportunity of how you can increase your reach to different consumers on the iPhone. And then I think some of the other things for someone new coming into the attention industry, or someone looking to elevate their targeting or measurement strategies, is thinking of how could you curate programmatic private marketplace deals that are focused on some of these attributes. How can you elevate your verification strategy by evaluating partners that measure this? How can you be high impact and influence what's going on with all of our carbon footprint, with all of the data that's being collected and processed for every single ad unit that is firing off, if it's something that is commoditized and consumers don't even remember it. So I think it's more about asking questions, and that's the advice that I would give. And I also think that the individuals that could be highly, highly influential that I think should be more integrated in the conversation are publishers. And the reason being is publishers are the ones that control the user experience for the content that we're consuming. They also, too, are the ones that are able to select which partners that they plug in, so they can influence the immersive or attention-grabbing units, the content environments that they are a part of, but then also, too, can really influence the environment with how many partners are plugged in, and making sure that we're being really effective with advertising campaigns that
Great.
consumers actually remember and like.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.